Hey digital landscape architect, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the ins and outs of RGB color and how it's used in our game worlds. Getting that RGB stuff down will help you not only understand colors as you might assume. No, it's much more than that. You'll need it also for shading and for understanding what all these normal and specular files do together to form a material. This will enable you to make better textures and materials for your game worlds. RGB stands for red, green and blue. 3 light channels that we mix and combine to create every color you see on the screen. You probably remember yourself dabbling around with watercolors in school or drawing with felt pens when you were a kid. From back then, you probably remember things like mixing blue and yellow will give you green. And if you mix more and more colors together, it gets darker. With your watercolors, mixing red, green and blue would give you black, or maybe a very muddy brown-gray. This is because you were adding more and more pigments to the mix, making it darker each time. In digital graphics, we don't mix pigments, we mix light, so the rules are completely different. When all 3 light channels red, green and blue are fully on, the result is bright white. And when they are fully off, the result is pure black. Every color in between is just a different balance of these 3 light intensities. Higher values for one channel mean stronger light intensity for that color. For example, a bright yellow is simply red and green turned up high, while blue stays 0 or close to 0. Each channel usually has values from 0 to 255. The RGB notation of sunflower yellow would be something like this. Or often the colors are also expressed from 0 to 1 instead of 0 to 255. Then the same color would look like this. If you want to convert 0 to 255 values to 0 to 1 values, divide each value by 255. For the opposite way, multiply each value by 255. Sometimes you might find 4 values instead of 3. In this case, you are looking at an RGBA value where the A stands for alpha. The alpha channel is not a color, but it contains information on the transparency. 255 or 1 in this case means fully opaque and 0 is fully transparent. Apart from that, the values 0 to 255 can also be written in hexadecimal notation. When you see 6-digit RGB values with characters in them, often accompanied by a hash, like this, it's a hexadecimal notation. Typically, this is used in web development. You will probably come across it at some point. But don't worry, it's still the same color. The values can easily be converted. I will not go into details on how to convert it to decimal values manually, because mostly you would simply type into Google convert to decimal. There are great tools on the web for you to play around with RGB values. I would recommend rgbcolorpicker.com. Although this website doesn't look the greatest, they give you options to play with sliders, enter color values directly, including alpha channel, and they also offer an RGB 0 to 1 version. You don't have to go there now because I included a demo and further explanation about the website at the end of the video. Finally, you should also know that RGB is not the only way that color information can be expressed. For example, there is also an HSL, which stands for hue, saturation and light, or a CMYK, which is mostly used in printing. If you want to convert any color information into RGB, simply add the color info you have into Google followed by convert to RGB. In games and motion graphics, every pixel of a texture stores RGB values to define what the surface should look like. A diffuse or albedo texture uses RGB to describe the base color of a material without any shadows or lighting baked in. Imagine a brick wall. Every pixel holds reds and browns that define the brick's overall look. But mostly, the diffuse texture alone looks quite dull because it doesn't have any lighting information with it. The other texture files, also often referred to as texture maps, don't use the RGB values as color, but as separate data channels. For example, a specular map, which might seem like a strange mixture of red, green and blue to you, is in fact 3 different types of info baked into one file. How do they do that? Imagine that they separate the color channels into red, green and blue, so that you end up with 3 individual images where each one has only one color channel. And this channel is now monochromatic. That means each pixel now has one value between 0 and 255, or 1 depending. And we can use these values to describe how intense a specific effect should be. A roughness map, for example, uses one channel to describe how matte or shiny the surface is. A metallic map uses one single channel to define how metal-like each pixel behaves. An ambient occlusion map has information on how shadows would occur on a surface. Normal maps also use RGB, but each channel stores direction data for tiny surface bumps, which make then the surface look as if it comes out. But in fact, it's not additional geometry, it's just the normal map. And there are even more places where RGB values are used, which you might never even see if you don't know about it. For example, there is vertex color. Each vertex, or point, of your 3D asset can have an additional color information assigned to it. This is the vertex color. You don't see it anywhere, but imagine how this opens up a complete new range of shading information which each asset can take with it. The vertex color again has the 3 channels RGB to be used to add different effects to the asset. How the vertex color is interpreted depends on the shader being used, but it could be things like defining where snow should appear on the surface when it snows in your game world, or defining where you want to blend in a second texture to make something look dirty or worn. You can also define additional texture files to hold this kind of information instead of vertex colors. This is then often called a mask. The shader must then have the information built in what to do with all those RGB data points. I will not go into too many details now, but I want to make you aware of it. By combining all these texture maps and maybe vertex colors or additional masks, it uses them to build the final appearance of your material. This is how a simple flat texture becomes a believable 3D surface once the shading is applied. If this was too quick to understand how the different texture files build a material together, don't worry, I will make a separate video for it. This video was meant to cover the basics. Now, for the people who would like to get a demo of the RGB theory, please stay for an exercise on the RGB Color Picker website. This will give you a much deeper understanding of the RGB system. For those who had enough theory, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video and drop a comment to help my channel grow, and see you in the next one. For those of you who stay, let's move to the computer. This is now the RGB Color Picker website. Let's have a closer look at this. At the top you can see where you can enter the complete RGB value in numbers and in hex. And then you have 4 sliders. Then you have a big color area, a color wheel, and a slider for the alpha channel. Did you know that you always only need 2 of the colors being on to move around the whole color wheel? Let me show you. The color wheel starts with red. So we make red active and green and blue inactive. The next color on the color wheel is yellow. And we already saw that this is a mixture of red and green. So we add green to the mix. See how the bar now moves across the color wheel? Also notice how the square in the color area stays in the top right corner all the time. The next color on the color wheel is green. To get to that, we take away the red. Then next it's teal, and we see that we move towards blue on the color wheel, so we add blue. And then from pure blue, we take away the green. And now we can see that red is coming up again, so we add red to get to magenta. And then finally we remove the blue to come to a pure red again. But if we only ever need 2 colors to move across the whole color wheel, why do we need a third color? Notice again how the square in the color area has stayed in the top right corner all the time. This means we were always looking at the most bright and most saturated version of the color. See how it gets darker to the bottom and more saturated and lighter to the left? Also see that the top left corner is completely white and the bottom edge is black. This is what we need a third color for. Let's use magenta again. So I add red and blue to it. Now to desaturate the color and make it lighter at the same time, we add the third color, green in this case. Now we see the square moving across the top of the color area, making the color lighter. If we want it darker instead, we do not add another color, but we take away color. Remember that I said earlier that black is the result of all channels being 0. To make the color darker, I need to take away from the red and the blue. But I cannot move 2 sliders at the same time, so let's now grab the square in the color area and move this down. Notice how the sliders change and red and blue is being taken away. Eventually, any color in the color area can be reached by either adding the third color or taking away from the 2 other colors. Let's assume I want this color here. Let's first move the square down to take away from the red and the blue, and then add the green to desaturate it and make it lighter again. But how does this help in practice? It helps you manipulate colors the way you want them while understanding what you're doing. When you want to apply this knowledge, first think about which 2 colors form the most bright and most saturated version of the color you are looking at. And then taking away these 2 colors makes the color darker, while adding the third color will make it lighter and desaturated. I really encourage you to play around with the RGB Color Picker website on your own. Honestly, it will help you a lot. For example, try moving the square in the color area vertically or horizontally and watch how the sliders react. Or position the square in the color area somewhere different from the top right and then move the color wheel and see how the sliders react. Or try to guess the approximate RGB values of colors which you have around yourself right now and see if you can recreate this color on the website. The first ones you will probably fail, but you will develop a feeling for it quickly. If you found this helpful, hit like, subscribe and share it with someone who might find it useful. And if you want to dive deeper into materials, shaders or texture workflows, click on one of the suggested videos here. Thanks for watching and have fun shaping digital worlds. Bye!